How to build a Blackgates Sweet Pea 5-inch gauge locomotive, part 73. In my opinion, this is the preferred way to machine the slots in the main part of the crossheads, to make sure that both of the parts are identical. I haven't machined that many crossheads over the years, and the ones that I have made in the past were nothing like these. I don't really know why I'm following the drawing, but I suppose as this is how to build a Blackgates Sweet Pea, well, this is how to build a Blackgates Sweet Pea more or less with slight deviations. And now it's top tip time. This is quite important. When you machine components, particularly in a milling machine, always take into consideration that you have to remove the tool marks. These have been partially removed. And don't forget, when you remove tool marks, you're removing metal, which reduces the dimensions of the component that you are making. This is something I always take into consideration when I'm using my milling machine. This is one of the laser cut parts for the crossheads that I got from Blackgates Engineering, and I really don't like where the holes are. And although I'm sure it works, I don't like the idea that they were designed to use 6 BA bolts. I think I'm going to use 5 BA bolts, which are one size larger. And if I drill these holes to accommodate 5 BA bolts, they'll be too close to the edge. More about that later. What I'm doing is using one of these parts just to mark out a piece of steel bar. If you're following this series, you may be thinking, oh no, it's finally lost his mind. I've seen him do this before, but no, you haven't. This is something entirely different. All I want to show here is the fact that I'm putting a third line in the middle between the two marked lines. So if I cut it on the bandsaw, even though the bandsaw cuts unevenly, there will be some tolerance to true up the part once it's made. And there's also more about that in the next episode. This is my extremely cheap marking out gauge, and underneath the foot is one of the parts of the original crossheads. It's 3/16 of an inch thick. But I don't trust this dimension, so the best thing to do is to put a 3/16 of an inch diameter twist drill underneath the foot of the height gauge, and then clamp it tightly. It's the measure twice, cut once syndrome, because if this isn't right, the whole job's going to be a mess. I need to mill a long slot to the correct depth and width down this piece of steel bar. I have no secrets. The first line that I scribed was wrong. That's why you can see a darker marky felt tip pen line. I used it to erase the original scribed line. The crosshead guide bar is 3/8 of an inch square, but it needs to be a bit deeper so I can fit a slipper or probably two. Over now to ye old primitive milling machine, built in the 16th century, or maybe a bit later than that, but it doesn't have any refinements. It has 2 handles and a thing that spins round, and a machine vise, and that's about it. I also don't have any parallels, so I'm using a piece of mahogany to support this piece of steel in the right place to allow me to cut the slot. It's well overdue, but I do need to mention that you must never use a milling cutter of the final size that you want to achieve. You may be able to do this in industry, but it doesn't work in the home workshop. This end mill is 3/8 of an inch in diameter, which is smaller than I need the final slot to be. It's not good to do all this work and then find out that the slot's too big. Because I make these videos for beginners and intermediates, I don't like to be too flash with the machinery. I do have some very good equipment in the workshop, particularly the collet chuck that I've shown in another video. This video footage is running at a much higher speed than normal, and here I'm applying some oil so I don't burn out the cutting tool. I'm machining a slot, so why am I not using a slot drill? The answer is simple. A slot drill has 2 cutting surfaces, an end mill has 4. End mills are very sharp and very nasty and quite brutal the way they cut the metal. This one isn't as bad as that, and it makes smaller chippings. Here I'm applying some oil so the chippings don't get too hot, and it's cutting beautifully. Don't forget, this milling machine is quite primitive. It doesn't have an auto traverse or anything like that. I once put one on it, but it wasn't very successful, so I took it off again. I've mentioned it before in my videos. I've owned this milling machine for a long time, and it is a Narock which is Korean spelled backwards. My friend Andrew has a really good milling machine with a DRO, and I do like the idea of that, but how many people can afford milling machines with DROs or have the space for a bigger machine? My Patreon supporters are dwindling. Maybe if I had some more I could buy a better milling machine, but it really isn't worth it for the moment. I also find by using an end mill for a job like this, which is only really a small slotting job, by bringing the tool back the wrong way, I get a very good final finish. In this clip I'm cutting in the right way. I've moved the tool to the left hand side of the piece of steel, and I'm cutting with the cutting surface facing the metal, and now once again I'm coming back the other way, which doesn't really do much, it just cleans it up. This is the time to get nervous. There is no sign of a safety net with this operation. If you get it right, then that's good. If you get it wrong, you start again. And with the amount of handle turning that I've just done, my back's starting to hurt, which is not a good sign. The reason for that is the handles are quite stiff to turn, because the clamps on the table are slightly tight just to make sure that it cuts smoothly. The end mill is getting very close to the scribe line now. I'm very pleased to say that the scribe line that I made with this very cheap height gauge is fine, it's perfectly level. And both of the scribed lines appear to be 100% parallel to each other. After this final finishing cut in the wrong direction, the job is finished. Some viewers may be wondering why I've cut such a long slot. Because it's much longer than it needs to be. There is a reason for this. From this piece of bar I'm going to cut and work on 2 crossheads. And if I make any serious mistakes, I can always refit the piece of bar, machine the existing slot a little bit longer, and then I can make a 3rd crosshead. I'm hoping I don't have to do this. An initial test fit of one of the crosshead guide bars with a piece of metal held over the top tells me that this is really just what I want. It moves very freely and very easily. And when I fit what I think is a piece of phosphor bronze, it's a perfect fit. It's quite a tight fit actually. Thinking about it, I would prefer to use 2 brass slippers, one at each side of the crosshead guide. This won't wear particularly well and it is sacrificial, but it's better than wearing the crosshead or the guide bars. And that is it for this one. Stay safe, stay healthy. Thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.